Good evening. I will call the meeting to order. Our intrepid chair has pulled a shift at ICU tonight, so he can't be with us. So I'm going to be the chair for the night. We just have the one item we just have the one business item and the delegation tonight. And this came out of EITP. We do have staff here to answer any questions and to respond to the delegation. If I might suggest, and this comment was mentioned by staff, there are an awful lot of whereas clauses, and they're great. We should remember that the important action clauses are the resolve clauses, and we should carefully focus on them. So, okay. So I'll call the meeting to order. Looking for a mover and a shaker for the approval of the agenda. You get the pick of the litter. Everybody's hand went up. Confirmation of minutes from the last time. Moved by Councillor Osanek, seconded by Councillor Holland. Any corrections or seeing none? All those in favor? Carried. Disclosure of pecuniary interest. Seeing none. We do have a delegation. The Vice Chair of KIEF, Ms. Lintner, is with us to talk to the committee regarding the action item tonight, regarding stormwater management. And so the floor is yours. Yeah, right there is fine. And you'll have 5 minutes, and then there'll be an opportunity for members of the committee to ask questions. So
great.
So the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm Anastasia. I'm a Kingston resident, and I've been one now for almost 6 years. I'm an environmental lawyer and an adjunct professor at Queen's University, and as Councillor Neal said, I'm the vice chair of KIEF and chair of the working group that brings you this report with the many whereases on stormwater management, and I'll get right to the punchline up front. In KIEF, we have the enthusiasm, energy, and expertise to help Kingston become a leader in stormwater management, and what we're asking for is a report on what's currently planned and what it costs, sort of a baseline of what the city is doing, because I don't feel I've been here long enough to really understand everything. Storms, as Environment and Climate Change Canada meteorologist Dave Phillips recently said at our Kingston Climate Change Symposium, are both about what's falling from the sky and what it's falling on. And both of these things are changing dramatically. As we urbanize, we create more hard surfaces, roads and sidewalks, parking lots and roofs. And our changing climate, as another Dave Phillip-ism, he said, climate change is steroids for storms. We are experiencing floods that are out of season and out of place. And we've seen that here in Kingston, particularly last year. We have to deal with the costs of these weather-related impacts like flooding. Water insurance claims are outpacing fire insurance 2 to 3 times, according to Dave Phillips, and potentially people are becoming uninsurable. And I know that that is also a concern here in Kingston. And all of this stormwater is overwhelming our infrastructure. We have sewer overflows and bypasses. The stormwater itself, as it runs off of the hard surfaces, is delivering pollutants directly to our rivers and streams and lakes, including things like pet waste, litter, road salts, pesticides, fertilizers, oil and grease, and so on. And it won't be enough for any person to say, well, I pay my property tax and my charges, I'll let the city handle it, or I pay my insurance premiums, I'll let the insurance company handle it. So we really need more we need to take more action, and that will require policy, and it will require programs and educational information for people. we can always just wait and react to what the province wants us to do. We have a new focus on stormwater and green infrastructure. We've seen that in the provincial policy statement. And in the Water Opportunities Act, we see a reference to including stormwater services just being recognized in the same way that water and wastewater services are treated. And it enables, but has not yet implemented, water sustainability plans for municipalities, which combine all our water services into one plan. We're anticipating runoff volume control targets for new development, linear development, and redevelopment in the province's low impact development stormwater management guidance manual. And we can react as those things happen to us, or we can be proactive and we can manage rain where it falls. We can look at other options and examples that have already been tried. We can develop an integrated rainwater management plan, as they've done in Vancouver. We could develop a stormwater utility, as many communities have done, and most notably, one of the best examples that we've come across is what they did in Newmarket. And we can build on Kingston's strengths. I have observed some amazing projects and programs, including very close to where I live, there's bioswales on Allington Street. There's the Groundbreakers project, where the King's Court rain gardens are being built. There's sewer separation projects. There is integration of water and wastewater in the master plan. And one that I brag about all the time in my professional work are real-time public notification of sewer overflows. We have the preventative plumbing program. We have the educational program, Fish and Frogs Forever, about what goes into our storm sewers. And I'm sure there's lots I'm missing from that list. And with all our successes, I know there's still more that we need to do. We've had 2 events in 2018 of facility sewage overflows. Those 2 events have released more volume than all 5 events in 2016. So as much as we're doing, there's more to be done.
1 minute to go.
Yes. There's lots of resources available. There's training from conservation authorities. There's Newmarket's stormwater charge. They built a toolkit to help you learn about what kinds of tools you could use, and other communities that have applied it. And in some, I thank you for your time and attention to what I think is an important matter. Kingston aspires to be Canada's most sustainable city, and I think it's sustainable and smart to be proactive and progressive on water management. And as I said off the top, Keith has right now a lot of enthusiasm, energy, and expertise to help Kingston become a leader, and we're asking for a report on the current status of plans and programs. And as we lawyers like to say, those are my submissions, subject to any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments? Yes, Councillor Sanik.
And thanks for that explanation. You mentioned Newmarket. Can you just describe again what Newmarket does?
What's really amazing about Newmarket, they have started a stormwater utility, so they have charges. And what they are able to do is, rather than having the kinds of programs they want to do for stormwater management funded through property, taxes are funded through a stormwater utility and a charge. And as they were working on that, they have a fabulous approach that they took to getting to understanding what the community cares about and wants, and then worked up to how they could achieve it, and then introduce this idea of how we can pay for it, as I understand what they did. And so that by the time the charge was being implemented, everybody was on board, and they felt it was quite easy. But the other piece that they did is they worked with, I think they had funding from Ontario's Ministry of Environment and Climate Change, and they built, given all the research they did, they built a little toolkit. And you can go online and you can click your size of community, your how you want to deal with residential. Do you want it to be very, very simple, a flat rate? Or do you want it to be very, very fair, which would be based on the actual impervious surface of your land, of your property? Do it for residential, do it for ICI, and then say whether or not you want to have a rebate program. And then they'll tell you all the communities in Canada and the US that they've researched that have done it already. And then you can look at what they've done and make some decisions. So it's a really interactive way of saying, what if we tried these 3 things or 4 things? Who else has already tried it? and help sort of speed up the learning if those are the approaches that we want to take.
Great. Any further questions? Yes.
Thanks very much. Yes, a hugely important topic. Just to go to the resolved clause.
Yes?
Just at the end of that first paragraph, it says, including any draft stormwater management master plan and estimated cost of carrying out identified commitments and initiatives. Now, staff may already have this, I simply don't know, but is this a major part of your request, the cost of carrying out identified commitments and initiative, and why is that important?
So what we've been talking about in our working group is we want to be as helpful as possible, and we don't feel like we have enough information just looking at the city websites and trying to find these things. And so I understand there might be a draft stormwater management plan, and if we could start with that and some understanding of what the thinking is, what you've already, what staff has already thought about and decided, discarded, this isn't for us. And then the cost piece is really just, from my perspective, it's for Keefe to be as helpful as possible. If we know what the plans and programs are and what they cost, then as we might do some work to try and assess that and make recommendations, we can build on, will it cost more, will it cost less, if we have that baseline information. Ultimately, I'm open to whatever this committee thinks would be helpful so that our energy on Keefe can be as helpful as possible too.
Great, thanks. As I say, staff might, when they respond,
I don't know.
know a lot of this. And another point that you sort of touched on was homeowners. Mm-hmm. So this really is more to do with city staff and their plans, mm-hmm. But if city staff's plan includes ways to help homeowners with their own stormwater management on their own property, would that, I figure that would be a major item for Keefe as a helpful tool?
Yeah, certainly. As I could imagine it, if what one of our plans is to have a rebate program or a citizens program or an educational program to help people understand how you can manage what falls on your land, then that is a component of stormwater management. And if it's there, then that would be helpful too, of course.
Yeah, thanks.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. I appreciate that. So we'll move on to our action item. If I could ask, because I'm not sure everybody knows the two gentlemen, the staff that are here. There is a gentleman standing. He's being really respectful, but he's also nursing a bad back, I think, which is his reason for standing. But perhaps you could introduce yourselves, and then we'll move on to the discussion of the motion.
I'm Marty. I'm a supervising engineer at the engineering department, and kind of focus on the stormwater management aspect of our projects that we work on.
And I'm Mark Campbell, the Director of Engineering, recently appointed.
Great, thank you very much. Any questions of staff regarding the motion before we open it up to the public and move the motion along? Yes?
I guess a reasonable question would be how much work would be involved in producing this, and where are we at? And when you read this resolve clause, how much work would be involved in presenting this information to Keefe and indirectly to council? And perhaps you can give us just an idea right now. It says, it asks for example, the current status of water management, which I think would be forthcoming, but also best practices and any draft stormwater management master plan, which I know we've got plans, but whether we consider them master plans or not is another thing. If you could just respond to that in general.
Mr. Chair, I think I'll offer a general comment, then I'll allow Adam to pitch in. I think as we understand the request, we will be giving you a report card on basically our activities supporting stormwater management and a number of the items that we have under study right now and underway right now. So that's how we understand it, and we can meet the timeline based on that understanding. Adam?
Yeah, that's correct there, Mark. Certainly we'll have to, I anticipate some consultation with some of the other city departments. It'll be, I think, the costing information where we may have to do a little bit more legwork, certainly for some future endeavors or initiatives where maybe we're at the preliminary design stage or ahead of that. We may have to do some cost estimating and budgeting sort of to come up with a ballpark estimate for some of the items.
Follow up. Understanding from that is this is a useful exercise no matter what, because it would give you an overall idea where you're at. And I didn't get an answer to my specific question, which was, do we have a storm management master plan? Are we in the draft stage? And I know we have plans, but it's not exactly the same thing, so.
We have a stormwater plan, but I believe it's a little dated. It's dated 2003.
So it needs renewed in any event, because it's 15 years old, right?
We're working on other, like the intensity curves, the amount of rainfall that falls, and how quickly it gets to our system. So, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Not quite sure how to approach this. As a counselor in an old area, Portsmouth, there used to be the subdivisions were built with swales. So everybody's backyard dropped it down and the stormwater was supposed to run off. And then people filled them up with gardens and started blocking everybody. And the city hasn't stepped in because it just is impossible to start governing people and their backyards and runoff. So if, as I suspect we're going to pass this, I would be very interested to know what we're doing in terms, I know subdivisions now have huge stormwater management ponds, and I'm not sure how engineering and stormwater management ponds in subdivisions relate to each other, because we're kind of talking about stormwater going into our systems where we have to process the water instead of just into the ponds where the earth does it for us. But I'm also interested in the idea of how water is being regulated in new subdivisions to avoid that problem of people being able to block each other's drainage, because I think that's a major problem that you can run into with the infiltration that people are worried about. It's a rambling question, but.
Yeah, to answer the first part, yes, it's a civil matter between neighbors where problems like that result, as you've mentioned. In the new subdivisions, I think it speaks to what was mentioned in the delegation, which is an education program whereby people understand why there's swales in their backyards. Because right now, I would venture to say there's a lot of folks that don't understand why that dip is in the backyard and why kids can't play or be leveled off to play in that area. So I think there's some education opportunity there so people understand and don't fill that in, blocking water upstream. The part about the ponds, it's an integrated system where the water flow is held in the ponds until the pipe network system can manage the flow. So it's held and then released slowly over time. I'm not sure if I answered that part of your question correctly.
Actually, I just was surprised that we're still doing swales that homeowners can fill in. So basically, to me, that's a big project that the city needs to make sure people understand, because it does cause great chaos once people start doing that, as I know as a counselor. And there was, I'll just, no, I think that's good. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Asani.
Thank you. Just two things. I know in the council term 2006 to 2010, there was a stormwater management landscaping plan that I know Mark Van Buren dug out and sent. I don't know if it was Keefe or to me, or I think it was all about Woodhaven. And so I just wondered, when this comes back and then gets packaged up and sent to Keefe, if the stormwater management landscaping policy could be included in that, because I know it came from engineering and I could probably find it somewhere in my basement, but maybe you know about it. And if I come across it, I'll definitely send it to you, because Keith might want to make some comments on that. And one of my neighbors, since we're talking about this, came to me a couple of months ago, and her son works for some city, I don't know what city, in Michigan, and maybe this is similar to the bioswales, right? But for the street boulevards, right? So between the sidewalk and the road, there's actually a cutout that's sort of ground, and so before the sewer grates that are ever so, many feet along a road, it actually is a cut-in to the person's boulevard, and it's just it's just soil, but it's kind of dipped down, and so that the water doesn't all flow into the sewers, it kind of then flows into that. And I don't, maybe for Keith Anastasia, like maybe you want to look into that. If I can try to find the city, if I see the neighbor, I'll ask her and try to send some information. But she did ask me to bring it to the city, and I just remembered it now since we're talking about stormwater management. And I don't know if there's any cities in Ontario doing that. But, it's definitely an innovative idea to take the load actually going down our sewers. Thanks.
Thank you. Any comment?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. The bioswales that you're describing, I believe, are the ones that were mentioned on Allington Avenue. So if you want to take a quick look on Allington, there's a couple of them, well, I think there's 4 of them altogether, 2 towards King Street and 2 up towards Union. And the water is diverted into those swales and captured, and there's some quality management there and quantity, and then it finds its way into the catch basin with reduced quantity and quality. Those were put in as a pilot, and we're evaluating those.
Great, yeah, I'll definitely tell her that. Bioswale sounds just like the same thing that's being done in Michigan then.
It sounds like it, but if you would like to forward that information on, if you have it, we could certainly look at ensure we are describing them the same way.
Yes.
Thank you. Excuse me. So having not experienced a stormwater master or management master plan before or anything like it, I'm curious, this is looking and hearing from the delegation, the request is for information on what the city's currently doing and plans going forward. I'm wondering if in that there will be information on any current partnerships, and not so much in terms of I guess just in terms of things that are working or not working with community groups, because there are quite a number of people active already, if that's something that we would learn more about through a report like this.
Certainly. I mean, even specifically with the Groundbreakers project that was mentioned by the delegate, we're partnering with the Red Squirrel Conservation Services on that kind of project, and a lot of times with pilot projects, we're also looking at innovative financing, so grants and things of that nature as well, in terms of partnerships. So certainly it will be talked about in the report.
Thank you. Any further questions? I just have a couple of quick questions. I know that some volunteers from Keefe had an opportunity to sit down with Greg and some of the people from planning around the OP to try to ensure that there was some language within the OP that was, I wouldn't say prescriptive, but was strongly recommending certain aspects, permeable pavements, and alternatives possibly to those always just having a subdivision and automatically building a pond, stormwater pond. I'm curious whether we'll be able to, under what I believe is the provincial government stormwater management guidance manual that's in development right now, will some of those recommendations become something that we can more insistently ask developers to do?
I think the short answer to that is yes, but I think that would be in the developing stages. So that, as you mentioned, that is not passed as legislation yet, but certainly is a guideline, and we've been adhering to some of those already, and that would be included in the report. But looking forward, I think we'll be a little more challenged to try to provide details that we haven't got under review right now and meet the timeline that's described here, but we'll do our best.
And I appreciate that there are best practices, and we've heard about Richmond Hill today, but also I believe Guelph has some policies that help, and for some subdivision developments, they're able to either have a greatly reduced stormwater pond or, in fact, find alternatives to a stormwater pond that, in the long run, are more economical. So will your report have an opportunity to point out some of those best practices elsewhere and look at ways that we can, for the next generation of development, be able to encourage less and less of the building a big stormwater. And developers quite often are supportive of that idea because a development pond could be 4 more lots or 6 more lots that they're able to develop. Could you comment on that?
I believe your question really related to what we could deliver in the report, and what we can commit to is doing our best on looking at that draft document, as well as what's in our OP and our subdivision design guidelines, and try to draw some conclusions there. But I think what we would be reporting on is what we're doing right now, and what we look at going forward based on our understanding of the lay of the land at the moment. But we will try to work in as much of those best practices that we can learn from some of the municipalities that you've mentioned here tonight, but as well as some of the other municipalities that we've been working with to date.
Great, thank you very much. Any further questions? Before we turn to the public for input, I'm just going to read the final whereas clause and the resolve clauses here, so we have a kind of focus for the discussion. And then before I seek a mover and a seconder, we'll invite the public to speak. So, whereas Ontario is in the process of developing a low-impact development stormwater management guidance manual, which may include runoff volume targets and other water quality control regulations, therefore be it resolved, the Environment, Infrastructure, and Transportation Policies Committee consider requesting, I guess this is now requesting, city staff to provide a report for discussion at the May 8th, 2018 meeting regarding the current status of stormwater management programs, including any draft stormwater management master plan and estimated cost of carrying out identified commitments and initiatives. And that following receipt of the above noted city staff report at the Environment, Infrastructure, Transportation Policies Committee, that Keefe, through its Conservation of Habitat, Natural Resources, and Biodiversity Working Group, provide a response for consideration by city staff, which may include recommendations about best practices. So we'll now, before we go to a mover and a shaker, anybody who wishes, and I guess we have one member of the public, so to comment on this, and just a reminder that you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks to Ms. Lindner for the delegation, very informative, and the discussion so far. So I am a retired geophysicist, and I bring some tech background to the topic, and along with great interest. My late father was an environmental engineer as well, so I grew up around that. So I think we've made important progress with this, and no doubt about it, Keith has really crafted a thorough motion. I read it through. I still have some areas I don't quite understand. I followed some of the discussion at Keith on it, so I'm trying to keep up. So my first question is, I guess sort of relating to some of the discussion, the city commissioned a report from outside consultants in the coastal engineering field to do an assessment of the 2017 situation in the Kingston area. And I was told by staff that that report would be ready by Q1 2018. This was back October or so, and we were talked about it at the Bell Park Working Group, which I served on last year. So we're now well into Q1 of 2018, and I've not got an answer from staff on when this report is coming. It seems to tie in very well with what Keith is doing and what this meeting is talking about right now. So my question is, can we have an update as to when this report is going to arrive either here or at Keith or at Council? That's my first question. My second point ties in with some of the material presented tonight and also a project that's coming to the Planning Committee tomorrow, which is the current proposal for the Davis Tannery site, which is a closed industrial site of some 40 acres, one of Canada's largest urban environmental problems for pollution. And the developer wants to take down 2,000 trees on the property as part of this proposal. So this is coming tomorrow, this is coming here now, and I'm just looking for coordination between the two.
Could I respectfully request that we keep the focus not on tomorrow's planning meeting, but on today's recommendation?
Thank you, Mr.
that's
Chair.
before us?
But what I'm saying is that my point is that the two are interconnected. You've got a project that's coming to planning. Planning staff were referred to in the discussion so far. And in this room tomorrow, we're going to be hearing this proposal. It's already online and so forth. So this is a major proposal. It's going to have grants attached to it for environmental cleanup. And you've got a property of that size that has a lot of stormwater-related issues on which a new subdivision is going to be proposed. So I think it ties in very well. I'm just making the point that there needs to be interconnection on these topics. And then my final point is clearly the city was behind it on the Bell Park file last year because the golf course was lost for golf in 2017 due to flooding of about 1/4 of the property. It never actually formally opened, and then it was voted to be closed in the fall. So we lost a city asset there due to, I would say, inadequate understanding of the potential for that very event to occur. So I'm just making that point, and this work that's being done now is really important because I think climate change is a reality as a result of human activity, and Kingston is aspiring to be a sustainable city, and we have a fantastic group with Keith, wonderful expertise. This committee is strong, and its work is essential to where we're going forward. So I just want to reinforce those points. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And would staff like to respond? I believe I heard one question and a number of comments there.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, the coastal report was the question I heard as well. We, along with everybody else along Lake Ontario and the Great Lakes, St. Lawrence, experienced high water levels and continue to experience high water levels throughout the year. We anticipated that we would be getting late third quarter, early fourth quarter 17, the ability to inspect those shorelines. That did not result. The water did not drop far enough for us to see the shoreline that we wanted to. So we held off with the consultant in that report until water levels did drop. We anticipate the consultant will be back to us early second quarter 2018, and at that time we'll be looking at the results from that report.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Quick comment, because I believe at least one of you is on the Conservation Authority. I've been whining for a couple of years about the fact that our floodplain mapping is lagging behind the reality of what our floodplains are. But I understand from talking to one of our colleagues who's also on that committee that they're doing a very exhaustive review right now and doing remapping of floodplains. Could you comment on that?
I believe it's in the 2018 budget, so I can verify that with staff, but I'm pretty, I know it's always in there. It's just a matter if this is the year they're actually going to do it, but I'm pretty sure they are.
Thank you. So we will move right along. There's a mover. Councillor Schell moved. Councillor Hutchison seconded. Yes, there's a question.
Thank you. The May 8th date, is that a fair date for you to come back with this? Because I believe this still has to go to council anyway to be approved. So how's that date?
We've consulted internally, and we can meet that date. And some of my comments earlier were trying to make sure we kept the scope matching what was in the recommendation here. And based on that, we're comfortable that we can meet that date.
Thank you. Any further questions? I have a question, but it's probably for the clerk. If when this comes on May 8th to EITP, if it's a complete report and properly approved by this committee, is there any chance that it could make the last meeting in May?
It's my understanding that when the report comes forward in May, that'll be an information report updating the status quo of the city's stormwater initiatives. And at that point, it's more or less the end of the line from a procedural standpoint for the report. And at that point, it would be up to the working group of Keefe to take the report and analyze it and come up with some recommendations.
And make it actionable.
Yes, so as far as I know, it's an information report and there's no further action from a council procedure standpoint. It would be the research side of things, which is occurring at Keefe.
Would the information report be shared with council under the information portion of the council meeting?
Under current practice, all of council receives the EATP agenda. Traditionally, information reports that are on a committee agenda do not get forwarded to council. So it would sort of be a standalone process.
Okay. But if we requested it, it could go forward as an information report. Okay. Thank you very much. Any further questions, comments? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And thanks to staff. So, and our vertical engineer. So, I don't believe we have any further motions. I don't believe we have any notices of motion. Is there any other business? Seeing none, I don't believe we have any correspondence. The date and time of the next meeting is indeed Tuesday, May 8th. So we'll have deja vu on this topic again at that date. So, the race to adjournment. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Schell, Councillor Hutchison.